Hello everyone, in this video we will understand HTML and CSS. As you saw in the last video, every time you open a website, a request goes to the server and the server sends you a response back. The response that we get from the server contains HTML, CSS, JavaScript and some other files such as image, font, text files. As a programmer, we are only interested in HTML, CSS and JavaScript, since those are the files that contains code. The view of the website that we can see is generated by these HTML and CSS code. We will discuss the use of JavaScript in later section of the video. Now, let's understand what is the use of HTML and CSS. In short, HTML is used to create web pages. CSS is used for styling web pages. A good analogy to understand HTML and CSS is, think of HTML elements like bricks and lumbers. It is CSS that allows us to arrange them, paint them, add some exterior design and make a beautiful house from it. In simple words, HTML elements are just bare-bone building blocks of a web page. If we want to arrange them, align them, size them or color them, we need CSS. Now, let's see HTML and CSS live on a web page. Here is my login page. Every element you see here is generated by a piece of HTML code. For example, if I want to see the HTML code that is creating this email input, I can just right-click on it and inspect. If I delete this piece of HTML code, the text box is gone. Do not worry, we deleted it from your browser. We did not break the website. Similarly, the black card that we see here, if I delete its HTML code, the card is gone. This proves that it's HTML code that is generating content of a web page. Let's reload the page. Now, let's see CSS code in action. If I inspect this card, you can see there is a section called Styles. Here I have a small piece of code that's setting the background color of this card to black. If I change this to red, the card will be red. Similarly, all these input fields email and password are taking full width. That is because CSS code has width set to 100%. If I make it 2 centimeters, as you can see, fields are now 2 centimeters wide. This proves it's CSS that gives style to a web page. By styles, I mean color, size, etc. And all of these style codes that you see are coming from a CSS file called style.css. If I open this file, you can see the complete CSS code. Now, let's recap what we just learned. HTML is used to create web pages. In simple words, HTML elements are just bare-bone building blocks of a web page. CSS is used for styling web pages. Styles, such as color, height, width, alignment, etc. We will explore different HTML elements and CSS syntax in just a bit. I am going to create a folder in my C drive and name it HTML. Let's create a file, demo.html. Let's open demo.html in the notepad. Here is the code to create a text input. Just input tag. Let's save it. Now, let's open the file in Google Chrome. As you can see, it displays a text input. We just used a notepad to write code. Writing code in a notepad is not easy. Using a code editor makes our life much easier. A code editor gives you inbuilt IntelliSense, meaning it can auto-complete your code. Modern code editors can give you repository connectivity, terminal support, extensions and much more. We will see some of these features as we proceed to our coding sessions. I will be using VS Code as my code editor, which is also one of the most popular code editors in the world. We can install VS Code or we can use it online. Online version does not have all the features, but for our HTML and CSS coding it is good enough. Let's go to vscode.dev. Let's open our code, demo.html. Here is our code for text input. Optionally we can add type equal to text, but that would not make any difference since the default input type is text. All input elements are void elements, also called empty elements. Means they cannot have content inside it. For example, I can put this input inside a div. As you see, it works fine. So a div can have content inside it. But an input cannot have a div or any other element inside it. There are also few other void elements like img and link, which we will discuss later. Now, let's label this input as username, and here is the code to attach a label to an input. Here is my label. Now you may ask, why label? Cannot we do the same using div? Yes, we can, but label has some benefits. For example, anywhere I click in this box surrounding these input fields, I will get my cursor on the text box. This is especially helpful for small screen devices. Also, blind people use a screen reader which reads the label, not div. There is also another way to attach a label to an input using for property and ID, but that's extra code. I prefer doing this way. Other than text input, there is also input type password. Let's label it password. Input type date, let's label it date. Input type checkbox, let's label it as Mary. Here you can see username, password, date field, and checkbox field. There are so many other input types. For the full list of input types, you can see w3schools.com or refer MDN at developer.mozilla.org. Here is a list of input types from w3schools.com. I have posted this link in the description. As you can see, my input elements are appearing in line. Let's break after each element. Now, as you can see, each elements are in a different line. Next, I am going to show you two more elements to get user input. Here is code for a text area. Let's refresh the page. This is the text area we just added. You must be wondering why text area is not an input. Well, that's because it can have content inside it. Let's put some content, hi. Let's also label it notes. As we can see, my notes text area is displayed. Next, I want to show you a select element. This is how a select element looks. As you can see, a select element has options. And the code is simple. Just create a select element, put some options inside it. I am going to have two options, male and female. Let's also label it gender. As you can see, here is my gender dropdown. Next element I will show you is the button. Code for a button is just a button tag. Let's label it as save. Here is my button. Next, I am going to show a table. Here is a table. As you see, it has 3 rows including header, and each row has 2 cells. Let's start with a table tag. Syntax for table row is tr and syntax for table cell is td. Let's label it as text. Let's create one more cell. Let's create 2 more rows. As you can see, here is the table. Let's replace text with actual values. I am going to put name and age in the first row. J and 30 in the second row. Hari and 20 in the third row. As you see, here is my table. Now look at this table. It has borders, it has width, and it looks better. As I told you before, HTML are bare-bone building blocks. To make the look better, we have to use CSS. Let's now style it. First, let me set a width. You can set width using any unit such as centimeter, inches, pixels, etc. Let's set 10 centimeters. Now the problem is width 10 centimeters won't be responsive. Meaning if my screen size changes, the table won't resize, so a better option is relative width. We can use percentage or viewport width. Let's set it as 50 VW. Here I am saying 50% of my browser width. As you see, when I change my screen size, the table adjusts its width. Now let's apply the border to the table. I am going to table style and say border 1px solid. As you see, we get a border on the table. But we want a border for each cell. Let's go to this TD and apply a border. Now as you table and cell border are separate. This is the default style for tables. Let's go ahead and set border collapse. I am going to write about border collapse equals collapse. All these changes I did in the developer tool to show you, not in my actual code. If I reload the page, it's gone. Let's do the same changes in the code. Let's style border 1px solid for table and set border collapse. Let's also set a border for the TD. Now, as you see, only the first TD has a border. Let's apply the same style to the next TD. Now the first row has a border. Now I have to copy this style for all TD. There is a better way to do that. Let's take this style, delete style equals, let's make a style tag, put it in a TD selector. Here I am asking the browser to style all my TDs using this. As you can see, it looks better. Now I want my header to be bold. Let's put style font weight bold.
Here.
But again I have to copy this to both my TDs, which I don't want. Another option is let's create a class called bold and apply this class to both TD. We can also further simplify it using a different tag th, this is for table header. Now we can do TD th here. Here I am saying apply borders to both table header and TD. Then for the th, I can say font weight bold. Other than setting a separate style for table header th tag also makes your code more readable. Someone looking at your code can easily figure out it's a table header. Finally, there are more than 200 CSS properties, and I am not going to show all of them. Also, as a programmer, you don't have to know them all. What you must know is that HTMLs is the bare bone elements. So someone asking you to color a button, rotate an element, or animate you should know CSS can do that. You can then Google, or these days you can even ask ChatGPT, which can give you the exact code. Next session, I am going to show you some important CSS properties such as flex, relative and absolute positioning, border radius, box shadow, etc. As a programmer, you must understand those CSS. Many CSS properties that I am going to skip are either pretty basic such as color, font weight, etc. or they are not used frequently.